Welcome everyone to Pathways Through the Orchard. This week we will be learning two parshas. The parsha of Nitzavim and Vayelech. In many years, these two are put together, depending on the calendar. Even in a year where many of the other parshas are not put together, when you have an extra Adar, but because of the way the holidays fall out, Nitzavim and Vayelech are put together here. So we'll start with an idea that I saw from Rav Ginsburg, and I'm going to do it in English, just to save the time of not doing it in Hebrew and English. But we're going to notice that in the first 6 verses, the word hayom appears 5 different times. Hayom means today. The first verse is Va'atem Nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Hashem Elokecha. And you are standing, all of you, today before Hashem, your God. Here we're going to focus on hayom. You are standing, all of you, today before God. So the question, of course, is which day are we talking about? What is the hayom? What's the today here? As I often do, for those who have Orchard of Delights, so in this parsha, I speak extensively on different ideas of what this day is, hayom. Today, we're going to focus on new insights that were not in Orchard of Delights. But here, I'm just going to read the first 6 verses in English, and everyone just notice how many times the word today appears. You are all standing today before Hashem, your God, the leaders of your tribes, your elders and your officers, every man of Israel, your young children, your women, and your convert, who is within your camp, from your woodcutters to your water drawers, that you may enter the covenant of God, your God, and his oath, which God, your God, is making with you today, in order to establish you today as his people, and that he will be your God as he spoke to you, and as he swore to your forefathers, to Avram, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov. Yet not only with you am I making this covenant and this oath, but with those standing here with us today before God, your God, and also with those who are not here with us today. So I put the emphasis on the word today. It appears 5 times. One of the reasons that these two parshas are put together is these are the 2 shortest parshas of the Torah. When they're read alone, you're very aware how short they are compared to other parshas. So Rav Ginsburg points out here we read the first 6 verses and the word today appears 5 times. But when you go through the whole parsha, the word hayom appears 13 times. 13 times it talks about today. Now, very, very quickly, some of the opinions of what is this today. One of them is that this was the last day of Moshe's life. And so he's giving, the whole book of Devarim is his last will and testament, as it were. But especially the last 4 parshas are all being given over on the last day of his life. Nitzavim, Vayelech, Azinu, and Zot HaBracha. According to tradition, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in Zayin Adar. So when it says today, Moshe is very, very aware that this is like the last time he's speaking to the people, and he's speaking to them today. That's one idea. The other idea that we are going to look at later is from the Zohar. The Zohar says the hayom is talking about Rosh Hashanah. When is the day that we stand before God? In truth, we stand before God at all times. But when is the time that we're most aware of standing before God? So the Zohar says Rosh Hashanah. And that's why the sages said this parsha is always read before Rosh Hashanah. It will always be the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah. Because there's this hint of standing before God. And then it goes through 10 different, call it categories or divisions of Israel, which includes everyone. According to tradition, everyone in the world actually stands before God on Rosh Hashanah. The whole world is judged on Rosh Hashanah. So 13 times in this parsha. Now, another word that appears over and over again, and the concept is the idea of brit, of covenant, and of God promising to Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. I didn't count exactly how many times, but it's very, very prevalent, even in these first 6 verses. So it says that you may enter the covenant of God, your God, and his oath, again, this promise, which God, your God, is making with you today. And then it says it again. Yet not only with you am I making this covenant and this oath, but with those standing here with us today before God, our God, and also those who are not here with us today. So the question is obviously asked, who are they talking about who are not here today? And so the answer is the soul of every Jew who would ever be born is included in this covenant that is being made. So that's why Moshe says, this covenant is being made with you who are standing here today, but also with every future generation. They are held by this oath and this covenant. Even though this parsha is one of the shortest, it is one of the most significant because the whole book of Devarim has a couple of themes. And one of the themes is blessing and curse. And the concept of the historical flow that encompasses past, present, and future. So before we get to that, so first we'll look at the significance that the word hayom is used 13 times. 13, of course, is the same gematria as ahava, of love. And the idea of a brit, of a covenant between God and the Jewish people, the covenant is an expression of God's love. This is not an ordinary relationship. A covenant is an unbreakable, eternal type of covenant oath relationship. And it's based on love. And it goes back to Abraham. That's why it's mentioned here in the Parsha. God says that the oath that I made to Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, because it all starts from Abraham. And he was commanded with the covenant of circumcision, but he was also in what's called brit ben abatarim, in the covenant of the pieces. So God made a covenant with Avram on the land of Israel, that the land of Israel would be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. So this parsha takes many of the themes of the whole book of Devarim and really focuses in relatively short amount of verses, but they're very, very powerful. And part of this is God is saying that if you keep the covenant, everything will be good. And if you don't keep the covenant, then a hard, long, cruel exile is what is going to happen. That's like the consequences of not keeping the covenant. So here we have the 13 times hayom and the idea of the brit of love, which equals 13, as the main focus of this parsha. So in Orchard Delights, we also brought a number of other meanings of hayom. One of them is the verse that we say in Kabbalat Shabbat, hayom im b'kolo tishma'u. And this is what the soul of the Mashiach said to Yeshua ben Levi in the Gemara, when Yeshua ben Levi had this elevation of soul and was in the presence of the soul of the Mashiach. And he asked him, when is the master coming? And the Mashiach said, hayom. He didn't come that day. And Yeshua ben Levi was very disappointed. And soon after, he had a revelation of Eliyahu Navi. And he said, the Mashiach told me he's coming hayom. He didn't though. And Eliyahu Navi said, you didn't understand the context. He meant hayom im b'kolo tishma'u. Today, if you, meaning all of Israel, will listen to his voice. So that's one of the meanings of hayom here as well. And in one of the Psalms, so God says to David, hayom yoladaticha. Today I have given birth to you. So for those who were here at the beginning, when I blew the shofar, and I explained that the secret of the shofar is connected to the number 9. These are the number of blasts that we make, and the length of the blasts are based on the number 9. 9 has to do with pregnancy, of giving birth. And so in a certain way, Rosh Hashanah, we are trying to give birth to ourselves in a new year, a rebirth. And so God says to David, hayom yoladaticha. And that hayom is every day. So I'm going to add a few more hayoms here, because what we're going to try to understand is what we'll call the eternity of time, or the elasticity of time, where past, present, and future are all melded together. In God's eyes, the way we understand it is past, present, and future are ever present and revealed before God. And that's why the letters of God's name, a yud and a hey and a vav and a hey, are the letters for the words of past, present, and future in Hebrew. Haya, hoveh, yiyeh. Those three all are made up of the same letters of God's name, because for God, time, God is the creator of time, and in a sense is outside of time. God manifests in every point of time, but God is also outside of time. He's the creator of time. And so this idea of hayom, Moshe is saying over and over again, hayom, hayom, hayom. This is the idea of the type of day that includes the past, all the way back to the covenant that God made with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to the future when Mashiach comes. And so in a couple of parshas, the last parsha of the Torah, so God tells Moshe to go up to the mountain, and he showed him all of Eretz Yisrael. He was on Har Nevo. Now, whether he saw it physically or spiritually, it's a combination of both, but it says that he showed him different parts of Eretz Yisrael, ad hayom ha'acharon, until the last sea, which presumably is the Mediterranean. The Rashi says that is the simple understanding, but Rashi brings the opinion, don't read it yam ha'acharon, read it yom ha'acharon, meaning the last, not the last sea, but the last day. So here again, we have this idea, this yom, hayom, being past, present, and future. Every day when we finish our prayers with the Aleinu, we end by saying, by Yom Hahu, Yiyeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. And it will be on that day, Hayom, that God's name will be one. So here we see that this word Hayom has many, many different meanings, but it all is connected to the eternity of time. There is we'll call it like a cute little saying, which is actually quite profound, that says, Ha'avar ayin, ha'atid adayin. It rhymes. I'll say it again. Ha'avar ayin. The past is nothing. It's gone. It's past. Ha'atid adayin. The future has not come yet. Bahoveh keheref ayin. And the present is like a blink of the eye. So I'll say it again so you can catch the poetry. Ha'avar ayin, ha'atid adayin, ha'hoveh keheref ayin. So this idea we see very, very much in modern physics. The relativity of time, this is very, very important to E equals mc squared. The whole revolution in the way we look at the world is very connected to light and time. Light, time, and velocity. That is what makes up what's called space-time continuum. And we know that when matter travels close to the speed of light, that time slows down. And the closer it gets to the speed of light, the more that time slows down, till mysteriously and paradoxically, at the speed of light, no time passes. And that is a headful to get to understand that reality, that no time passes at the speed of light. So here we see this word hayom has many, many, many different meanings. But here we're focusing especially on the idea of the eternity of the Torah, that we know that there's this concept called ein mukdam v'muchar b'Torah. There's no before and after in the Torah. What does that mean? That sometimes when we're reading a parsha, there'll be something that's not in chronological order. And Rashi will point it out, the sages pointed it out, that we do have a continuum in the Torah, but sometimes all of a sudden we'll have a parsha that is not in a chronological order. And therefore they have this term, There's no before and after in the Torah. We also know that only in biblical Hebrew, not spoken modern Hebrew, when you put a vav before a verb, if the verb is in the grammatical form of the past, but it has a vav before it, you read it as if it's the future. And the opposite, if you have a verb that's written in the future tense, but there's a vav before it, you read it as if it's in the past. And this is giving the Torah this eternal type of feeling that past, present, and future is existent at every moment. And that's why a person can have what we'll call an eternal moment, where it's not something you can measure on a clock, a watch, but a person can experience something that it's like a dream. And they know this from dream analysis, that they can mark by the brain waves what type of sleep you're in and when you are dreaming. So many times a person is dreaming for 10 minutes, and yet their experience could be hours, years, lifetimes in that 10 minutes. Now that's in a subconscious, unconscious state, but there's also that idea in conscious state, that a person, even some of you at this moment, as you're listening to this, your mind might be flowing into the past. You're in the present. You might even be hearing my voice. This is just an example. But your thoughts have slipped into the past or the future, anticipating or planning or visualizing the future in the present. And so therefore, in human consciousness, we also have this idea of past, present, and future can be at the same time. So we mentioned that this parsha is always read before Rosh Hashanah. And this is a big part of the experience of Rosh Hashanah, and especially of hearing the shofar. That for those of you who have the art scroll, Rosh Hashanah, Machzor, so you'll see before the blowing of the shofar, Rabbi Sadia Gaon, he was one of the leaders of the Jewish people in Babylonia, approximately 1,000 years ago. You'll see that he lists 10 different places or ideas that are connected to the shofar. And they span that the shofar is a sound of crying, danger, exile, and at the same time, it's a sound of redemption and joy and Mashiach. But also, we see the span of the shofars at Mount Sinai. The shofar, this is where we really get it, of at the Akedah Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak, when the angel comes and says, don't do it. Now God knows that you have yira, that you have awe of God, and showed him a ram caught in the thicket by its horn, its shofar. So here you have the shofar of Yitzchak, Avram and Yitzchak. You have the shofar of Har Sinai. You have the shofar of the prophets who warn that the sound of the shofar is a warning, is a wake-up call. My wife always says that when the sirens go off here in Israel, that's like the sound of the shofar. Or for those who have been here on Yom HaZikaron or Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day or Israel Memorial Day, where the sirens go off simultaneously in the whole country for 2 minutes. This is like the sound of the shofar. But also in our prayers every day, we say, we ask God, Tika b'shofar gadol l'cheirotenu. Please blow the shofar of redemption, of our freedom. So the sound of the shofar is very connected in the prophecies of Mashiach coming, of the final redemption. So here also, Rosh Hashanah is hayom. It's like a timeless day, and especially during shofar blowing, this idea of the sound just kind of opens up time, past, present, and future. So I just want to mention that at the end of this parsha, it is the only time in the whole Torah that mentions explicitly free will. Even though in the book of Devarim, it's mentioned a number of times already, this idea of, like in Parshat Ra'eh, Ra'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. See, look, today I am putting before you a blessing and a curse. And this appears a number of times in many portions. Only in this parsha, though, it sets up that same formula, but then it says, Ubecharta b'chaim. And you should choose life. God says, I put before you life and death, a blessing and a curse. Ubecharta b'chaim. You shall choose life. So I'm mentioning this. There's so much to say about free will. That is not our main focus tonight. The great paradox of free will and God's omniscience and divine providence. But when discussing what does it mean to be in the image of God, that God created human beings in the image of God. So one of the most important answers is free will. That is something that is unique to human beings. We're told that the animal kingdom does not have true free will, and even the angels do not have true free will. Only a human being. We can use it correctly or wisely, or we could not use it correctly or wisely. That is our choice. That's what the Torah says. Ubecharta b'chaim. But so the reason I'm mentioning this in connection with hayom, and like God said to David HaMelech, hayom yoladaticha, today I have given birth to you. So this is like the idea, the formula of tshuva, that when a person, this is from the Rambam, Maimonides, that when a person does tshuva, it's as if they become a new person. They become reborn, a new person. And so here we've discussed this before, where the sages say, Ein mazal Yisrael. There is no influence or predetermination of the stars for a Jew. Ein mazal Yisrael. This is on the assumption that a Jew is living according to the Torah. If a Jew does not live according to the Torah, in potential, they still have that they can rise above any, not just astrological influence, any influence. Call it peer pressure, genetic, nature and nurture. And this is the true meaning of free will. Ubecharta b'chaim. And so here in relationship to time, that's what I just want to get to, that we're not bound by our past, and we are not bound by the consequences of our past that lead to our future, because every action in the past or the present has consequences. Mida keneged mida, measure for measure. But ultimately, we are above any of those influences. And Rav Ginsburg adds that in modern psychology today, I'm not saying all psychology, but there's a very, very strong influence, and there is certainly a reality to this, is that what happens to a young child in their formative years, and we're talking about even until age 1 or 2, when most of us have absolutely no memory. Some of us can come up with 1 or 2 memories from when we're 1 or 2 years old, if any. But so much of our personality and reactions are based on those formative years that we don't even remember. But this also we can overcome, that there is an influence of our early years, our nature, and that's the nature, the nurture, that we can even overcome the unconscious that's way deep hidden in the past, but affects everything in the present, which affects the future. So that was our first insight for tonight. Now, because we're doing 2 parshas, so that is what I wanted to give over for Parshat Nitzavim.